So, I want to talk about crappy childhoods today. Not in some way that allows us to victimize ourselves and blame our current lives on our traumatic experiences or our crazy parents, but instead using and embracing those experiences to become our very best and to shine our brightest. There's a whole philosophy of life that says that we grow the most when we face adversity. But that's not always easy to recognize when you're in the thick of it. Many of us had less than ideal childhoods. You may have grown up in poverty or with abuse or divorce or alcohol or drugs. And when all you have seen and felt is negativity, it can be really difficult to break that cycle in your life. I spent a lot of my 20s lamenting what I was not given as a kid and letting it adversely shape my decisions and my confidence level. And then around 30, I realized that focusing on the grief was getting me nowhere except more of the same of what I was trying to run from. But this isn't always conscious, right? It sometimes just subtly becomes part of the story we repeatedly tell ourselves. We use our childhoods as an excuse for where we are or aren't in our life and for everything that is wrong. But now, finally, at 40, I look back and I realize I wouldn't change a thing. My crappy childhood made me tougher and more resilient and work harder. It made me appreciative of what I have now and softer towards other people. I was not handed things or happiness on a silver platter, and I'm grateful because it pushed me to become a better person than I might have been. So the next time you want to use what happened to you as a kid as an excuse, turn that thought on its head. Instead, embrace your past, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Use it to inspire you. Use it to know exactly what you do not want to repeat. Use it to have more empathy, or like our next guest, use it as creative material. Coming up is the woman of the century who put her shocking childhood to work for her in her best-selling books, in her poetry, and the way she has embraced and conducted her entire life. The one and only Miss Maya Angelou. You're listening to The Kathleen Show, and during the break, be sure to check us out online at theKathleenShow.com.
Live and be young and you're the only one to walk in line, killing time. It's as sure as a gun. I'm feeling volcanic, everything is alright. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm feeling volcanic, everything is alright. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Float on the flames with you.
Welcome back to the studio. I'm Kathleen Slattery-Moschkau, and this is the program where we shake things up and say hell no to the status quo. And my next guest has been shaking things up her entire life and is truly one of the most gorgeous human beings in our midst. And I'm going to try not to get choked up through this whole thing. Maya Angelou is a poet, an award-winning writer, a journalist, an activist, a performer, a dancer, an actress, a director, and a teacher. She is also a 3-time Grammy Award winner for her autobiographical spoken word recordings. In 1993, Maya recited her poem called On the Pulse of Morning at President Clinton's inauguration. Since 2006, she has been hosting a weekly radio program on the Oprah and Friends channel. Maya has over 30 literary titles to her name, including her best-selling book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and most recently, Letter to My Daughter. Maya Angelou, welcome to the program.
Thank you very, very much, Kathleen. I'm delighted to be on the program.
So who is Letter to My Daughter to, and why did you write it?
Well, first off, I know you've done your homework, so you know I've given birth to no daughter.
Right.
And I have the greatest thing that ever happened to me is the birth of my son. However, as good as he is, and he's the best, he's not a daughter. and so it's been my good fortune to find a lot of young women and some older ones who allowed me to mother them. And they are black young women and older, white young women and older, some Asians and some Spanish-speaking, some gay, some straight. I've just found a lot of young women who think I know a thing or two, and that I can speak for them. It's a wonderful gift. So I wanted to. As soon as I approached my 80th birthday, I started thinking about this letter to my daughter. If I could write a letter or a series of letters about various things which have happened to me and the lessons I've learned from those events. In the book, I try not to say what lessons I've learned, but I do say what things have happened, certain events have occurred. I have not said what I learned because I know that women are resourceful, individual, distinct. And so what I learned from one thing, you will learn something else from the same thing. And what you learn today may be different from what you learn reading the same thing in 2010.
Isn't that the truth? It's all about kind of where you are, in your own journey at that moment when you're taking this in. Yes,
exactly. So I enjoyed writing it. I had started about 20 years ago writing some suggestions and some ideas to Oprah. Just when I think about certain things, I'd make a note. And then when I was writing on poetry or composing a little piece of music or something, I'd make a note, and I have a big box called WIP, Work in Progress. Some whole sheets with just about 4 words on them, and some 2 or 3 pages densely printed. I pulled them out last year and started looking, and I thought, there are essays in some of these little ideas. So I thought, let me write them. And then as I wrote them, I realized this is the letter to my daughter.
Towards the end of Letter to My Daughter, you tell a story of a meeting you attended with a Mr. Wilkerson who made you repeat the words, "God loves me," several times. And you go on to say, after about the 7th repetition, I became nervous and thought there might be a little truth in the statement. There was a possibility that God really did love me, Maya Angelou. I suddenly began to cry at the gravity and grandeur of it all. I knew that if God loved me, I could do wonderful things. I could try great things, learn anything, achieve anything. That knowledge humbles me today, melts my bones, closes my ears, and makes my teeth rock loosely in my gums. And it also liberates me.
Yes.
What role has faith played in your life?
That's such a wonderful question. Only because I've been just using it about a half hour ago, looking at faith and knowing that I don't have faith all the time. I mean, there may be those people who never question. But, I'm a human being. God made me. So I have a lot of questions. And sometimes I wonder, is there a God? And then, as soon that makes me so nervous, I run straight to God. And I say, you better be careful. I almost didn't believe in you for a minute there. And I'm reminded of the apostles and the various prophets who say, I believe, Father, forgive my disbelief.
I'm so glad, though, that you're so honest about it. Do you know how comforting it is to hear that? Because I think it's something all of us wrestle with, but very few people want to admit.
I know, and I think that just makes us more human. It just shows that we are more alike than we are unalike. I mean, I'm trying to be a Christian. I'm working at it. And I'm always amazed when people walk up to me and offer me their hands and say, I'm a Christian. I think, already? Already got it? Wow. I figured it. It's like trying to be a Jew or a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Shintoist, a Confucianist. It's not something you achieve and then you sit back and, cross your feet and say, I really got it now. I don't have to do it anymore. I think it's a process. There's a song which is, and they'll know we are Christians by our love. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They'll know whatever I am, that I'm it by the way I comport myself, how I treat you, my courtesy with you, my idea that I'm civil. And civil has something really to do with civil rights. I think everybody deserves civility.
I want to say that, as where I really got to know you better was on your radio show, Oprah and Friends, because everything you're talking about right now, you're the most gracious person that I've ever listened to. And it's been a lesson for me, but you're, just an example that you're really walking the talk. And I've really appreciated listening to you on that program.
Well, I thank you. You interest me too. Now that I know your last name are two names.
Right.
Is that Flaherty?
So it's Slattery, which is Irish. So
yes.
I've got some Irish blood.
And Moschkau, which is Russian too.
Which is actually German. So my husband's German. So yeah, it's an interesting combination with lots of beer involved.
And Kathleen is very Irish. So
very Irish. Right,
yes.
Right. So I want to ask, this is one thing that so interests me about you. I want to ask about your writing process, because what I've read about it seems to play a big outcome in the honesty of your writing. Can you tell us a little bit more about your ritual?
Well, I keep a room in a hotel in my town. And when I'm working, and I rent it by the month, nobody has the right to enter the room. Once I really take it, I have all the photographs and art pieces or whatever they're called taken off the wall and taken out. The only thing in the room is a bed, a table, and a chair. And I put in it a Bible, Roget's Thesaurus, a dictionary, some playing cards, and a good bottle of sherry, a bottle of good sherry.
I love that.
And I go to my room about 5:30 or 6 in the morning. And I try to convince myself, enchant myself away from the known, so I can suspend myself from belief. And then I try to immerse myself into the time I'm writing about, so I am fully there. And then I can smell the aroma of that particular time. I mean, it's really enchantment and magic and a lot of prayerful sort of dancing. And finally, after a half hour, maybe an hour, the language comes and sits in my hand. I write everything, and I have yellow pads and pens, and I work. And I try to work until about midday. And then I go home and take a shower, because writing is hard work. And although I would have had a shower in the morning, I need another when I get home. And then I try to pretend that I'm normal. And I may go to the supermarket. Or my housekeeper and I would make some wonderful dishes for dinner. And so I try to operate in the familiar. I say, how do you do, and that. And I wear clothes that button up or zip up or something. Put shoes on. But the truth is, I'm not fit company for man or beast. I really am not. I'm still in that room and listening to that language, the language of English. So beautiful.
Oh, there's so many places I want to go with this. I mean, because you're renowned for very honest writing and, sharing pieces of yourself that most can't or won't do. Do you ever wrestle with whether to share or admit something? Because I've been so... you've swept me off my feet sometimes with your honesty and how far you're willing to go.
Well, I know this. I know that human beings are more alike than we are unalike. And if you don't admit it, and I do, it doesn't mean you don't understand what I'm talking about. You just don't want to admit it. That's all.
Right.
So I do. I know that there is nothing human that can be alien to me. I know that. And the statement was made by Terence. Homo sum, humani nihil me alienum puto. I am a human being. Nothing human can be alien to me. But now I know that. So if I write about something that is unpleasant, that doesn't keep accolades of support and laudatory words on my behalf, but whatever it is, there are other human beings who've done the same thing, or wanted to, or will do. So if I use it, I'm using it to say this happened to me. I am a human being. And this is how I responded to it. And so, even those who can't admit that it has happened to them, in the privacy of their boudoirs or their studies, they have to say, oh, God, it happened to me just like that.
It's so true. There are moments when I'd be reading your sentences that I would have to glance away from the page because you nailed it. You hit something that I wasn't expecting and had buried so deep. But we have to take a very quick break, but we will be right back with Maya Angelou.
Don't look so surprised to see me. You never wanted much. It's so fun and nice to be here. Oh, how you do and such. I'm better now since I hit the ground. I was spinning like a fool. I'm bigger now since you cut me down with honesty. Honesty, you're looking so sublime. They tell me honesty.
Welcome back. This is Kathleen Slattery-Moschkau, and I'm continuing my conversation with Maya Angelou, and we've been talking about Maya's spellbinding life and her monumental body of work, including her most recent book, Letter to My Daughter. Maya, I know you've lived this long and glorious life, but when you're reading through your body of work, it's so hard to fathom how you turned out, the quantity and the quality and the breadth of work that you have. I mean, between the writing and the performing and the teaching. I mean, did you ever imagine that you would do all these things?
Well, not originally. No, I thought I was going to be a very successful real estate broker. And I was going to have alligator shoes and a matching alligator purse. And then I was going to have suede gloves. And they would come just to the wrist, where there'd be a nice little pearl button. Oh, I knew I was going to dress. Yeah.
Oh.
I wanted a Chanel takeoff. I didn't expect that I'd really want to, even afford to buy a Chanel. But I knew a lot of seamstresses who could make me a Chanel-looking suit.
Well, it's the imagination in those details that make you such a fabulous writer. I'd like to ask, okay, what would you like to say to that little girl in Stamps, Arkansas?
Continue. I'd like to say that to you as well. Continue. Continue to live your life with as much courtesy, as much elan, as much fervor, and civility as possible. And realize that civility is one of the civil rights that we should be able to share with each other, to speak to each other with respect and gentleness and courtesy. Yes, continue. Continue to realize that there's nobody higher than you. There can be nobody more human than you. And nobody's beneath you. Know that. There's nobody, no human being less human than you. So there's no reason for you to have your nose up in the air. Just be an honest, sincere human being, trying to be the best you can, in competition with no other person.
Amen. You have this beautiful show on Oprah and Friends, and it was there, as I mentioned earlier, that I came to know you and wanted to know so much more. Can you briefly touch on your friendship with Oprah? I know you mentioned it before briefly, but I know that many times she's credited you as her mentor.
Oh, she's a wonderful, wonderful spirit, wonderful brain, and she's courageous. I love her and I admire her. I'm very careful about what I say to her because I know that she's going to listen to it and pull it apart and use what she can of it. And if she can't use any of it, she just puts it aside. I don't know if later on she goes back to examine, but she's wise beyond her years, and that makes it easy to talk to her. I have a lot of daughters, but she's one of those and one of the few who gave herself to me as a daughter. And I have the Black Rose, my brother's first child, who is also a daughter, and a woman in Ghana. Those are the three. I thought at one time, if I could have daughters, those would be the three principal daughters. And then Jessica Mitford, who was a sister friend of mine, she died, and it's still breaking my heart. And she had a daughter, and she gave her daughter to me. So it just so happens that I have a few that just cling. They sit on my lap and on my shoulder, whether they know it or not. And the composer and singer, Valerie Simpson, she's one that just sits in the crack of my arm. So there they are.
Maya, I want to thank you so much for your time today and your warmth and your candor. I'll never forget this.
Thank you, Kathleen. God bless your heart and the hearts of your listeners, your audience.
That was the great Maya Angelou, and you can find out more about Maya and her latest book, Letter to My Daughter, at mayaangelou.com or at our site, theKathleenShow.com. And if you haven't already read it, I also highly encourage you to read Maya's first masterpiece, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.